October 30th, 1501. If you walked into the Apostolic Palace of the Vatican on that night, you wouldn't hear prayers, you wouldn't hear hymns, you would hear laughter. You would see the Pope, the Vicar of Christ on earth, sitting on a throne. To his left, his son Cesare Borgia, to his right, his daughter Lucrezia. But in front of them, on the floor of the Holy Palace, were 50 women. They were not nuns, they were not saints, they were 50 of Rome's most expensive courtesans, hired for a single night of pleasure. What happened next is a story so scandalous that the Church tried to burn the evidence for 500 years. They call it the Banquet of Chestnuts, a night where the line between the Holy Palace and a brothel completely disappeared. Stay with me until the end of this video, because the most shocking part isn't what happened on the floor, it is who was sitting in the corner, writing it all down in his diary. Welcome to Red Ink History. Today we attend the Pope's party. To understand the party, you have to understand the host, Rodrigo Borgia, also known as Pope Alexander VI. If you think the mafia was invented in the 20th century, you haven't met the Borgias. They were the original crime family. They didn't care about God, they cared about gold, power, and legacy. Rodrigo didn't get to be Pope by praying. He bought the position. He bribed cardinals with mules loaded with silver, and once he had the keys to the Vatican, he moved his children in. Cesare Borgia, his son, a psychopath who killed his own brother to become the favorite, and Lucrezia Borgia, his daughter, a woman used as a political pawn, married off 3 times to secure power. By 1501, the Borgias were untouchable. They were the kings of Rome. And like all kings who have too much power, they got bored. They wanted entertainment, and Cesare Borgia knew exactly how to provide it. Cesare organized a supper in his private apartments inside the Apostolic Palace. He invited the Pope, he invited the inner circle, and he invited 50 honest prostitutes. That is the actual phrasing from the historical record. Honest, meaning high class, expensive, the best in Rome. At first it was just a dinner. The women sat with the cardinals, they ate partridge and drank fine wine. They laughed. The Pope watched from the head of the table, smiling. But as the candles burned lower, the mood changed. The servants cleared the tables. Cesare gave a signal, and the ballet began. The women were ordered to dance, but not a waltz. Servants brought in baskets, heavy baskets filled with chestnuts. They threw them across the marble floor, thousands of them, rolling into the corners, under the tables, under the papal throne. Then the order was given. The women were told to crawl on their hands and knees, moving through the lamplight, picking up the chestnuts. It wasn't a game, it was a display of dominance. Here were 50 human beings, reduced to crawling animals, for the amusement of the Holy Father. And the prize? The historical record says that prizes were offered to the men who could perform the most times with the women. Silk tunics, gold shoes, hats. The Vatican, the holiest place on earth, had been turned into a contest. Imagine the scene, the flickering candelabras, the smoke, the laughter of Cesare Borgia echoing off the painted ceilings, and in the middle of it all, Pope Alexander VI, watching, cheering. The man who held the keys to heaven was busy unlocking the gates of hell. You might be thinking, this sounds like a lie, a rumor invented by the Pope's enemies. That is what the Church said for centuries, but there was a witness. His name was Johann Burchard. He was the master of ceremonies. It was his job to record every single event the Pope attended, every mass, every meeting, and every party. He sat in the corner that night, quiet, invisible, and he wrote it all down in his diary, the Liber Notarum. He didn't write it with emotion. He wrote it like a shopping list. Supper was given by Duke Cesare. 50 courtesans were in attendance. They crawled on the floor. He wrote it in Latin, hoping no one would read it, but the ink didn't fade. And what of Lucrezia, the woman who sat next to the Pope that night? History remembers her as a villain, a poisoner, a witch, but in the red ink archives, she looks more like a victim. Imagine being 21 years old. Your father is the Pope. Your brother is a serial killer, and you are forced to watch 50 women crawling on the floor for their amusement. Lucrezia didn't have a choice. She was a currency. Her father married her off 3 times to powerful men. And when he didn't need those men anymore, they mysteriously died. Some say she kept a hollow ring filled with arsenic to protect herself. Others say she died of a broken heart, trapped in a golden cage built by the men in her family. While Cesare and the Pope laughed at the banquet, Lucrezia's silence was the loudest sound in the room. Pope Alexander VI died 2 years later. His body swelled up and turned black in the summer heat. A fitting end, some said, for a rotting soul. The church tried to bury the diary of Johann Burchard. They hid it in the archives. But the truth has a way of crawling out, just like those women on the floor. The Banquet of Chestnuts remains the ultimate proof that absolute power corrupts absolutely. This was a file from the red ink archives. If you want to know the other secrets the Vatican is hiding, click subscribe and tell me in the comments, was the Borgia family the most evil dynasty in history? Or were they just honest about their sins?